My mother-in-law had me thrown out of my own baby shower, calling me an unstable mess in front of everyone. She thought she had won, but she made one mistake. She left the antique, Rattle she gave me behind, not knowing its hidden microphone was recording her every triumphant word. This is where the story truly begins, and you won't want to miss what happens. Make sure you're subscribed to see it through to the end. We're always curious. Where in the world are you all watching from today? Let us know in the comments. The air in our sun-drenched living room was thick with the sweet scent of cake and the soft perfume of 50 well-meaning women. It was supposed to be the happiest afternoon. My baby's shower. Pastel blue and yellow streamers, a mountain of beautifully wrapped gifts, the gentle hum of conversation, everything was perfect. I was 8 months pregnant, perpetually tired but floating on a cloud of blissful anticipation. My husband, Liam, had outdone himself helping me set up, his architectural precision ensuring every balloon was perfectly spaced, every chair perfectly aligned. I sat in the guest of honor throne, a comfortable armchair we'd brought in from the nursery, feeling like a queen. My best friend, Sophie, was emceeing the gift opening, her laughter ringing out as she handed me another box. I was unwrapping a set of hand-knitted booties from my aunt when a single, happy tear escaped and traced a path down my cheek. It was a moment of pure, overwhelming gratitude. "Oh, look at you," my aunt cooed. "So sweet." But from across the room, another voice cut through the warmth, sharp and cold as ice. "Tears, Andrea, already? You must try to keep a handle on your emotions. It's not good for the baby." It was Margaret, my mother-in-law. She stood near the dessert table, a porcelain teacup held delicately in her hand, her expression one of perfectly sculpted concern. But her eyes, as always, held a different story. They were small, calculating chips of flint. For the 2 years Liam and I had been married, Margaret had treated me with a kind of patronizing chill, as if I were a slightly disappointing project she was obligated to tolerate. I forced a bright smile. "They're happy tears, Margaret. I'm just feeling very loved today." A few women murmured in agreement, but Margaret just took a slow sip of her tea. "Of course, dear. It's the hormones, I'm sure. They can make one terribly overwrought." The mood shifted almost imperceptibly, a cool draft entering the warm room. Sophie shot me a look, a mix of annoyance and solidarity, before handing me the next gift. It was from Margaret herself. The box was long and slender, wrapped in heavy, cream-colored paper with a silver bow. Inside, nestled on a bed of silk, was an ornate silver rattle. It was heavy, intricately carved with cherubs and vines. "It's an antique," Margaret announced, her voice projecting so everyone could hear. "It has been in the family for generations. I wanted my first grandchild to have something of substance, a piece of our heritage." It was a beautiful, if slightly ostentatious, gift. "Margaret, it's stunning," I said, my voice sincere. "Thank you so much." "You're welcome, dear, just be careful with it. It's quite delicate, much like your nerves, it seems." The second jab landed, and this time a few of the guests shifted uncomfortably. I felt a flush of heat creep up my neck. I tried to ignore it to focus on the joy of the day, but Margaret wasn't finished. Over the next half hour, she became a master of the backhanded compliment, the thinly veiled insult. When I admired a modern, minimalist mobile someone had given me, Margaret sighed audibly. "Such interesting taste. I do hope the baby won't be overstimulated by all that black and white." When I laughed a little too loudly at one of Sophie's jokes, she remarked to the woman next to her, "Such hysterical laughter. Nerves, you know." The final straw came when we were cutting the cake. Liam had come back inside to help, his arm around my waist. I was describing our plans for the nursery, how I was painting a mural of a whimsical forest on one wall. "A mural?" Margaret interrupted, her smile tight. "Andrea, darling, you're a graphic designer, not a fine artist. And in your condition, climbing ladders and breathing in paint fumes, it sounds rather manic. Liam, are you sure this is a good idea? Her behavior is becoming quite erratic." The word hung in the air. Erratic. The room went quiet. All eyes were on me. I looked at Liam, expecting him to defend me, to laugh it off. Instead, I saw a flicker of concern in his eyes, a seed of doubt planted by his mother's relentless campaign. "Mom, it's fine," he said, but his tone lacked conviction. My composure finally cracked, not with anger but with hurt. My voice trembled as I said, "Margaret, that was a cruel thing to say. I'm just excited about my baby. There is nothing erratic about it." "You see," Margaret said too, arning to Liam and the other guests with a dramatic sweep of her hand. "She's completely overwrought. She can't take the slightest bit of loving concern. She's not well, Liam. The stress is too much for her." Liam looked from his mother's feigned distress to my genuine tears of frustration. He was caught, a deer in the headlights of his mother's making. He did what he always did in these situations. He tried to smooth things over, to placate everyone. He turned to me, his voice gentle. "Andrea, honey, maybe Mom is right. You do seem upset. Why don't you go upstairs and lie down for a little while? Just to rest. I'll handle things here." The words felt like a physical blow. Go upstairs. He was asking me to leave my own baby shower. He was taking her side. The faces of our friends and family blurred around me, a gallery of pity and confusion. Margaret looked on, her expression one of pure, unadulterated triumph. I looked at my husband, the man who was supposed to be my partner, my defender, and saw a stranger echoing his mother's manipulative words. I couldn't fight them both. Numbly, I nodded, handed the cake knife to Sophie, and walked out of the living room. As I climbed the stairs, the muffled sound of the party restarting followed me, the laughter feeling like 1,000 tiny betrayals. It wasn't just my party she had taken from me. It felt like she was stealing my joy, my sanity, and my husband, all at once. The door to our bedroom clicked shut behind me, silencing the last echoes of the party. The sudden quiet was deafening. I sank onto the edge of our bed, the mattress dipping under the combined weight of me and my unborn child, and finally let the tears come. They weren't the happy, grateful tears from before, but hot, jagged tears of humiliation and disbelief. I had been dismissed, sent to my room like a misbehaving child, in my own home, at my own party. A few minutes later, a soft knock came at the door. "Andrea, it's me." Sophie slipped into the room, her face a thundercloud of rage. She closed the door firmly behind her and sat next to me on the bed, her arm immediately going around my shoulders. "I am going to go downstairs and pour a bowl of punch directly onto that woman's perfectly coiffed head," she seethed, her voice a low growl. "How dare she? How dare Liam let her?" I shook my head, wiping my eyes with the back of my hand. "Don't, Soph. It'll just make a bigger scene. She'll use it as more proof that I'm surrounding myself with aggressive people." "She's a monster, a Machiavellian puppet master in a Chanel suit," Sophie declared. She stood up and began to pace the length of the room, her protective energy a stark contrast to my defeated slump. "Everyone downstairs is just pretending like nothing happened. A few people looked uncomfortable, but Margaret is working the room like she's the hostess. It's sickening." Sophie started gathering the gifts that had already been brought up to the room and began arranging them on the dresser, a gesture of order in the midst of chaos. I brought up the first load. "We're not letting her ruin this completely. Look at all this lovely stuff for my future nephew or niece." Her attempt to cheer me up was sweet, but my heart felt like a lead weight in my chest. The joy had been surgically removed from the day, and all that was left was the raw, aching wound of Margaret's cruelty and, worse, Liam's compliance. As Sophie organized the pile of gifts, my eyes drifted over them. The tiny clothes, the soft blankets, the colorful books. And there, on top of a stack of onesies, was the long, cream-colored box from Margaret. Sophie had placed the silver Rattle next to it. It gleamed under the lamplight, heavy and ornate. It was beautiful, but looking at it now filled me with a sense of dread. It felt less like a gift and more like a trophy from her victory downstairs. An hour passed. The sounds from downstairs eventually faded as the guests began to leave. I heard Liam's cheerful goodbyes, his voice sounding so normal it made my stomach churn. Finally, the front door closed for the last time, and I heard his footsteps on the stairs. He opened the door tentatively. "Hey," he said softly, Everyone's gone. Mom stayed to help clean up. Of course she did, consolidating her position as the helpful, stable matriarch. I didn't answer, just stared at the pattern on our duvet. Liam came over and sat on the bed, careful to leave a few feet of space between us. Andrea, I'm sorry about how that all played out. I know you were upset. Upset? I finally looked at him, my voice flat. Liam, your mother publicly humiliated me. She accused me of being mentally unstable at my own baby shower in front of all of our friends and family. And you asked me to leave. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration I knew all too well. I didn't know what else to do. She was making a scene, you were crying. I just wanted to de-escalate things. If you took a minute to yourself, you'd feel better. You thought I needed to feel better? I wasn't the one causing the problem, Liam. My voice rose, and I immediately regretted it, knowing it would only play into Margaret's narrative. See, this is what I mean, he said, his voice laced with a weary sort of pity that was infinitely worse than anger. You're so on edge. Honey, the pregnancy, it's a lot. Your hormones are all over the place. My mom sees that and she worries. She can be blunt, I know, but she means well. She's just from a different generation. I stared at him in disbelief. He was parroting her, word for word. Hormones, means well, overwrought. Margaret had spent 2 years laying the groundwork for this, and now, when I was at my most vulnerable, her plan was working perfectly. He didn't see a conniving manipulator. He saw a concerned mother and a hysterical, pregnant wife. So you believe her, I said, my voice barely a whisper. You believe I'm unstable. No, of course not, he said quickly, but the denial was weak. I just think you're sensitive right now. It's understandable. Let's just drop it for tonight, okay? We can talk about it tomorrow when you're feeling calmer. He leaned in to kiss my forehead, but I flinched away. The hurt was too raw. He sighed, a sound of deep marital exhaustion, and stood up. I'm going to go help Mom finish up downstairs. He left, closing the door behind him. I was alone again, but this time the feeling was different. It wasn't just humiliation anymore. It was cold, terrifying fear. I was losing him. She was actively, methodically turning him against me, and he couldn't see it. My gaze fell back on the pile of gifts, back to the silver rattle. It was so intricate, so perfectly polished. Margaret had called it a family heirloom, passed down for generations. But as I looked closer, something felt off. For an antique, it was flawless. There wasn't a single scratch, not a hint of tarnish in the deep crevices of the carvings. My graphic designer's eye, trained to notice the smallest imperfection, the slightest inconsistency in a design, was on high alert. It was beautiful but cold, just like her. She said it was a family heirloom, but there was something too modern, too perfect about it. A seed of an idea, a wild, unbelievable idea, began to sprout in the back of my mind. Lying in the quiet room, I let my mind drift back, searching for the origin of this silent, corrosive war Margaret had been waging against me. It hadn't started with a bang, but with 1,000 tiny cuts, each one so small that to protest would have made me seem, well, exactly as she wanted me to seem, overly sensitive and unstable. I remembered the first time Liam brought me to his parents' house for dinner. Margaret had greeted me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She moved through her large, impeccably decorated home with an air of regal ownership, pointing out art pieces and expensive furniture. When she asked what I did for a living, I told her I was a graphic designer. Oh, how creative, she had said, her tone implying it was a charming little hobby. Liam tells me you work from that little apartment of yours. It must be so nice to have something to keep you busy. The implication was clear. My career was insignificant, a temporary distraction before my real life's work, being a wife to her successful son, began. Liam, eager for his mother to like me, had just smiled, missing the subtle barb completely. Then came the wedding planning. Margaret had strong opinions on everything. My choice of an outdoor, rustic venue was quaint but prone to insects. My simple, elegant dress was lovely, but perhaps a bit plain for a woman marrying into this family. She suggested florists, caterers, and photographers, all of whom were outrageously expensive and not at all our style. Each time I politely declined, she would sigh dramatically and tell Liam, "I do hope Andrea isn't overwhelmed." Planning a wedding is so stressful for a girl who isn't used to events of this scale. She was building a narrative brick by brick. Andrea is simple. Andrea is fragile. Andrea is easily overwhelmed. Liam, who adored his mother and saw her only as a strong, capable woman, interpreted her interference as love and concern. He saw her criticisms as helpful advice from someone with more experience. He couldn't see the condescension, the systematic chipping away at my confidence and my standing within his family. After we were married, it only intensified. She would pop by our house unannounced, running a finger over a dusty shelf or rearranging the throw pillows on our sofa. "Just helping out, dear," she'd say brightly. "I know how busy you must be with your projects." She bought us a new set of garish, ornate crystal glasses because ours were what students drink from. Liam saw a generous gift. I saw another reminder that my taste was inferior. The most insidious part was how she framed it all as concern for Liam. "I just worry about him," she'd say to me in a confidential whisper. "He works so hard, and he needs a calm, stable home to return to. A man can't thrive in chaos." The message was always the same. I was the chaos, and she was the stability. The pregnancy announcement had been a turning point. Initially, Margaret had seemed thrilled, her social circle now granting her the coveted title of grandmother-to-be. But her control tactics simply shifted focus. She questioned my choice of doctor, my diet, my decision to work until the 8th month. In my day, we understood that a woman's job during pregnancy was to rest, to create a serene environment for the baby. This modern insistence on doing it all seems so stressful. And then came the gift of the rattle, presented just hours before she executed her coup at the shower. We'd had a small family brunch that morning. Margaret had arrived, carrying the long, cream-colored box like a sacred offering. "I have something for the baby," she had announced, her voice filled with manufactured sentimentality. She handed the box to me. "This, Andrea, is special. It's a sterling silver rattle that belonged to my grandmother. It was given to my mother, and then to me when I was expecting Liam." She paused for dramatic effect. "It's a symbol of the strength and love passed down through the women in this family. I want you to have it, to welcome you and my grandchild into that tradition." Liam had been so touched. "Mom, that's incredible, thank you." I had felt a flicker of hope. Was this an olive branch, a genuine gesture of acceptance? I'd looked at her, trying to find sincerity in her eyes. But as I thanked her, I saw the same cold, flinty gaze. It wasn't a gift of inclusion, it was a statement of ownership. This was her grandchild from her family, and this rattle was a symbol of her lineage, a lineage she clearly felt I was lucky to be joining. Her performance had been flawless. She had established the rattle's importance, its antique status, and its emotional weight in front of Liam. It was the perfect prop. Who would ever suspect that a cherished family heirloom, a gift bestowed with such ceremony, could be anything other than what it seemed? Lying there in my silent bedroom, replaying the scene in my mind, the pieces began to click into place. The perfect, flawless condition of the antique. The way she'd made such a public show of giving it to me, her relentless campaign to paint me as emotionally fragile. It wasn't a series of random, cruel acts. It was a strategy. And the baby shower, the public humiliation, hadn't been a spontaneous event. It had been the culmination of her plan. She had pushed and prodded until I broke. And then she had presented my reaction as proof of the very instability she had worked so hard to create. And the rattle was still downstairs, in the living room where she and Liam had been cleaning up. My heart started to pound. What if it wasn't just a prop? What if its purpose wasn't finished yet? The last of my tears had dried into a crust of salt on my cheeks. The profound sadness that had hollowed me out for hours was slowly being replaced by something else, a cold, sharp-edged anger. Margaret had underestimated me. She saw a weepy, hormonal artist. She had forgotten that a graphic designer's entire career is built on seeing what others miss. The misaligned pixel, the mismatched hex code, the subtle flaw in an otherwise perfect image. And the silver rattle, was a flawless image with a critical flaw. I heard the front door close. Liam's footsteps on the porch, followed by the sound of his mother's car starting. He was finally alone. A few moments later, he came back upstairs. He poked his head into the bedroom, his face etched with exhaustion. "Mom's gone," he said. "Are you feeling any better?" "I'm tired," I said, which was true. I was bone-weary, but not in the way he thought. "Okay, well, try to get some sleep. I'm going to tidy up the last few things and head to bed." I waited until I heard him moving around in the kitchen downstairs. Then, I swung my legs off the bed, my movements slow and deliberate. My heart was thudding a steady, heavy rhythm against my ribs. I crept out of the bedroom and down the stairs, each step a silent declaration of war. The living room was mostly back to normal, a testament to Liam and Margaret's efficient cleanup. But on the coffee table, next to a neat stack of gift bags, lay the silver rattle. It had been left in the very center of the table, almost as if it were on display. I picked it up. It felt cold and heavy in my palm. I ran my thumb over the intricate carvings of the cherubs, their smiling faces seeming to mock me. I tilted it back and forth, but it made no sound. The rattle part was apparently just for show. I turned it over and over, my designer's eye scanning every millimeter of its surface. And then I saw it. It wasn't a seam. Not exactly. It was a hairline fracture in the design, so perfectly integrated into the swirling vines that it was nearly invisible. A normal person would never notice it. But I did. It was a tiny, telltale sign of modern manufacturing, not 100-year-old silversmithing. Following that hairline crack with my fingernail, I found the source of my suspicion from earlier. A pinprick hole, no larger than the tip of a needle, drilled discreetly into the base of the handle. It wasn't part of the design. It was a microphone port. My breath hitched. It wasn't a wild idea. It was real. This wasn't a family heirloom. It was a bug, a listening device. My mind raced. Margaret had given it to me at brunch. It had been in my possession in our home all day. It had been sitting on the gift table throughout the party. And it was still here. Still in the living room, where Margaret and Liam had just spent the last hour talking after everyone else left. The full, horrifying scope of her plans slammed into me. She hadn't just orchestrated my humiliation. She had planted a spy in our house to listen to the aftermath, to gather more ammunition, to hear Liam's frustrations, to monitor my every move. My hands trembled, not with fear, but with a surge of adrenaline. The weeping, defeated woman from a few hours ago was gone. In her place was someone else, someone with a cold, clear purpose. I needed proof. I needed help. I pulled out my phone, my fingers flying across the screen. I didn't call my mom or my sister. I called the one person I knew would understand the technical reality of what I was holding. "Sophie," I whispered, my voice urgent. "Andrea, are you okay? It's late. I need you to come over, right now." "What's wrong? Is it Liam? Is it that witch?" "It's the rattle," I said, my voice low and steady. "The one from Margaret. It's not an antique soft. It's a bug. There's a microphone in it." There was a moment of stunned silence on the other end of the line. Then Sophie's voice, all business. "Don't touch it. Don't try to open it. Don't say another word about it out loud. Are you alone?" "Liam's here, but he's in the kitchen. He can't hear me." "Okay, I'm on my way. I'll text you when I'm outside. Let me in quietly. And Andrea." "Yeah." "You're not unstable," she said, her voice fierce. "You're brilliant. Now sit tight." She hung up. I took a deep breath, clutching the cold silver rattle in my hand. It was no longer a symbol of Margaret's victory. It was a mistake. Her one crucial mistake. And as I sat there in the semi-darkness of my ruined party, I knew with absolute certainty that I was going to use it to burn her entire manipulative world to the ground. The game had changed. She had started a war, but I was the one who had just found the ammunition. 20 minutes later, my phone vibrated with a text from Sophie. "Here, back door." I crept into the kitchen, where Liam was wiping down the last of the counters, his back to me. "I'm just going to get some fresh air in the backyard for a minute," I said, my voice deliberately casual. He grunted in acknowledgement, not even turning around. I slipped out the back door into the cool night air and found Sophie waiting by the gate, a small, black pelican case in her hand. Her face was grim, her eyes scanning the house. "Is he still inside?" she whispered. I nodded. "In the kitchen. We can go straight up to my office." We moved through the house like shadows, our footsteps silent on the stairs. My office, a small room at the back of the house where I did my freelance design work, felt like a safe haven. I closed the door soundlessly and turned on my desk lamp, keeping the overhead lights off. I placed the silver Rattle on my desk blotter. Sophie opened her case, which contained what looked like a surgeon's toolkit: delicate pliers, spudgers, tweezers, and a magnifying glass with a built-in light. As a cybersecurity analyst, her work usually involved hunting for digital threats, but she had a hobbyist's passion for hardware and gadgetry. "Okay," she said, pulling on a pair of thin latex gloves. "Let's see what the Wicked Witch has been up to." She picked up the Rattle, her touch expert and precise. She examined the hairline seam I had found, then the tiny pinhole. "You were right," she murmured, an angry admiration in her tone. "This is professional-grade stuff, not some cheap toy from a spy shop. The casing is custom-milled to look like an antique. She must have paid a fortune for this." Using a thin metal tool, she carefully worked at the seam. After a tense minute, there was a soft click, and the ornate head of the Rattle came loose from the handle. Sophie gently pulled it apart. My jaw dropped. Nestled inside the hollow handle, surrounded by a thin layer of foam padding, was a tiny circuit board, a compact battery, and a minuscule microphone. A small, blue LED light was blinking faintly. "It's still active," Sophie said, her voice tight with fur. "Why, and it looks like it's voice-activated. It records when it detects sound and saves to an onboard memory chip. There's no transmitter, so she'd have to physically retrieve it to get the files. She was planning on coming back for it." The audacity of it was breathtaking. She had intended to swap it out for the real antique she probably had stashed somewhere, or simply ask for her precious heirloom back for safekeeping. Sophie pointed to a tiny micro SD card seated on the board. "There's the prize." With a pair of tweezers, she delicately extracted the card. "Let's see what we've got." She inserted the card into a reader attached to her laptop. A moment later, a folder popped up on the screen, filled with dozens of audio files, all time-stamped. My heart pounded as Sophie double-clicked the first one. The sound of my own voice filled the small office, tinny and distant. It was from the brunch that morning, when Margaret had first presented the gift. We could hear my thanks, Liam's touched response, Margaret's syrupy speech. Then came the files from the party itself, the muffled sounds of chatter, my laughter, Sophie's jokes. It was all there. "Okay, let's skip ahead," Sophie said, her fingers flying across the trackpad. She scrolled down the list to the files created after I had been sent upstairs. The timestamps corresponded to about an hour ago. She clicked on one labeled with a time just after Liam had gone back downstairs. A voice filled the silence. It was Margaret, but not the carefully modulated, concerned voice she used in public. This was her real voice, sharp, smug, and dripping with contempt. "And he sent her right up to her room, just like I knew he would," Margaret's voice gloated. "Did you see the look on her face? Absolutely pathetic." Another voice, which I recognized as her sister, my Aunt Carol, cackled. "You played that perfectly, Marg, the concerned mother-in-law. It was a masterpiece." "He's finally starting to see it," Margaret continued, her voice full of triumph. "He sees what a weepy, emotional mess she is. He needs a strong woman by his side, someone to guide him, not some fragile little artist who cries at the drop of a hat. This pregnancy has been a gift. It's made her exactly the caricature I needed her to be." I felt the blood drain from my face. Sophie reached out and grabbed my hand, her grip like iron. "There's more," she whispered. We listened, frozen in horror and fascination, as Margaret laid out the next phase of her plan. "The best part is, Liam was just down here telling me how worried he is," Margaret bragged. "He said, "Mom, I don't know what to do, she's so sensitive." I told him it's my duty to help. I'm going to suggest that, given Andrea's fragile state, perhaps I should be added to their joint bank accounts. Just to help manage things, you understand, to take the pressure off of poor, overwhelmed Andrea. Aunt Carol gasped with delight. "Margaret, you are a genius." "He'll be eating out of the palm of my hand within a month," Margaret said with chilling confidence. "By the time this baby is born, I'll be the one making the decisions in that house. She'll be nothing more than an incubator." The audio file ended. The silence that followed was heavy and absolute. Every doubt I'd had, every time I'd wondered if I was being too sensitive or paranoid, was obliterated. This was not my imagination. This was a calculated, vicious campaign to erase me from my own life. I looked at Sophie, my eyes wide. The hurt was still there, a deep, throbbing ache. But now it was accompanied by a feeling of pure, cold clarity. I had the proof. I had her dead to rights in her own vile words. "What do we do now?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Sophie leaned back, a slow, dangerous smile spreading across her face. "Now," she said, "we make copies. Lots of secure, cloud-based copies. And then, Andrea, you are going to let your husband see the real monster he calls a mother." Sophie, ever the professional, worked quickly. Within 10 minutes, she had created multiple encrypted copies of the audio files, uploading them to a secure cloud server she controlled and saving another copy onto a thumb drive, which she pressed into my hand. "Guard this with your life," she instructed. She then carefully reassembled the rattle, placing the now blank memory card back inside. It looked exactly as it had before, an inert, beautiful object. A Trojan horse whose secret was now ours. After Sophie left, I crept back to my bedroom and hid the thumb drive in a small jewelry box at the back of my closet. I lay in bed, my mind racing, listening to the sounds of Liam getting ready for bed. He came in a few minutes later and slid under the covers, sighing heavily. "You asleep?" he whispered. "No." "Look, I know today was awful," he said, his voice soft with contrition. "I promise we'll talk tomorrow. I want my wife back. I feel like I'm walking on eggshells around." "You." The irony of his words was so bitter it almost made me laugh. He felt like he was walking on eggshells. I lay there, silent, my body rigid, clutching the knowledge of his mother's treachery like a shield. Tomorrow he would learn the truth. The next morning, the atmosphere in the house was thick with unspoken tension. Liam tried to be cheerful, making me toast and tea, but his movements were hesitant, his smiles strained. He was waiting for the emotional storm he was sure was coming. I, however, was eerily calm. The rage and hurt had settled into a solid core of resolve deep in my gut. I knew what I had to do. Around mid-morning, Liam's phone rang. It was Margaret. "She wants to come over," he said, covering the receiver. "She wants to clear the air with you. She feels terrible about yesterday." I looked him straight in the eye. "No," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "Not today, Liam, we need to talk tonight. Just you and me, no interruptions, it's important." He looked relieved to have a concrete plan. Okay, yeah, I'll tell her." He spent the rest of the day in a state of nervous agitation, clearly dreading the confrontation to come. I spent the day preparing. I went for a long walk, breathing deeply, centering myself. I wasn't just fighting for my marriage anymore, I was fighting for my child's future, for a home free of Margaret's poison. When Liam got home from the one-site meeting he couldn't miss, I was waiting for him in the living room. I had made tea. The silver rattle was sitting on the coffee table, right where I had left it. "Okay," he said, sitting on the sofa opposite me. "I'm here, let's talk. But before you start, I just want to say my mom called again. She's really, really sorry, Andrea. She knows she crossed a line. She loves you. She was just worried." I let him finish. I let the excuses, the justifications, the lines that Margaret had so carefully fed him hang in the air between us. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I just watched him, my expression unreadable. When he was done, I took a slow sip of my tea. "Liam," I began, my voice even. For the past 2 years, your mother has engaged in a systematic campaign to undermine my confidence, my career, my taste, and my role in this family. Yesterday, she tried to convince you and everyone we know that I am mentally unstable. You say she loves me. You say she was worried. I'm going to let her tell you herself what she was really thinking. His brow furrowed in confusion. What are you talking about? I didn't answer. Instead, I reached into my pocket, pulled out the small thumb drive, and plugged it into the USB port on our smart TV. I navigated to the audio file. You might want to listen closely, I said. I pressed play. The room filled with the sound of Margaret's voice. That smug, triumphant, venomous voice. Liam's posture changed instantly. He leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, his eyes wide with disbelief as he heard his mother gloating to his aunt. I sent her right up to her room just like I knew he would. Did you see the look on her face? Absolutely pathetic. Liam flinched as if he'd been struck. He looked at me, his mouth slightly agape, then back at the television, as if he couldn't reconcile the voice he was hearing with the mother he knew. He sees what a weepy, emotional mess she is. He needs a strong woman by his side. I watched his face as he absorbed every poisonous word. I saw the moment the wall of denial he had so carefully constructed around his mother began to crumble. He heard her mock my family. He heard her belittle my career. And then came the final, devastating blow. I'm going to suggest that, given Andrea's fragile state, perhaps I should be added to their joint bank accounts. By the time this baby is born, I'll be the one making the decisions in that house. She'll be nothing more than an incubator. The recording ended. The silence that descended was more profound than any I had ever experienced. Liam didn't move. He just stared at the blank screen, his face pale, his expression shattered. The man who had left for work that morning, convinced his wife was hormonal and his mother was merely overbearing, was gone. In his place was a man who had just been forced to see the unvarnished, ugly truth. He slowly turned his head to look at me. The confusion was gone, replaced by a look of such profound horror and regret that it almost broke my heart. The fog had lifted, not gently, but in a brutal, shocking instant. "Andrea," he whispered, his voice cracking. Where did you get that?" I simply pointed a single, trembling finger at the silver rattle, sitting on the table between us. Liam stared at the rattle, then back at me, his mind struggling to connect the dots. The journey from confusion to comprehension was stark and brutal on his face. He looked at the ornate silver object, a supposed symbol of family heritage, and finally saw it for what it was. A weapon that had been aimed directly at me, at us. "She bugged us," he said, not as a question, but as a statement of dawning, sickening fact. That's a listening device. I just nodded, my eyes never leaving his. There was nothing more to say. The evidence had spoken for me, more powerfully than any tears or arguments ever could have. For a long moment, he was utterly still. I could almost see the past 2 years replaying in his mind, every strange comment, every backhanded compliment, every well-meaning piece of advice from his mother now cast in a new, sinister light. He wasn't just processing the recording, he was recontextualizing his entire relationship with her and his failure to protect me. The shame and fury rolling off him were palpable. Finally, he stood up. His movements were stiff, robotic. He walked over to the coffee table, picked up the silver rattle, and held it in his hand, weighing its physical and metaphorical gravity. Then he looked at me, his eyes filled with a pain so deep it was startling. "I am so sorry, Andrea," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "I am so sorry. I was blind. I didn't listen to you. I let her do this to you, to us." "I know," I whispered. That was all he needed. Forgiveness could come later. For now, acknowledgement was everything. He closed his eyes for a second, took a deep, shuddering breath, and when he opened them again, the pain was gone, replaced by a cold, hard resolve I had never seen in him before. It was the look of an architect whose foundations had been dynamited, now staring at the rubble and planning not just to rebuild, but to build something stronger with impenetrable walls. He picked up his keys from the entryway table. "Where are you going?" I asked, though I already knew. "I have to go see my mother," he said, his voice devoid of any warmth. "This doesn't end until she hears this, and she hears it from me." He walked out the front door without another word, the silver rattle clutched in his hand like a verdict. I didn't follow. This was his battle to fight. My part was over. I had uncovered the truth and delivered it. Now he had to be the one to confront the source of the lies. I curled up on the sofa, pulling a blanket around me, and waited. The house was silent again, but this time it was a peaceful silence. The quiet after a storm has finally broken. An hour later, which felt like a lifetime, his car pulled back into the driveway. He walked in, looking drained but resolute. He came and sat next to me on the sofa, taking my hands in his. "It's done," he said quietly. "What happened?" I walked in. She was in her living room, reading a book, looking for all the world like a sweet, harmless old woman. He began, his voice flat. "She started to ask if I had calmed you down." I didn't say a word. I just took out my phone, connected it to her speaker system, and played the recording for her. He described the scene with chilling detail. The way her face had paled as her own voice filled her perfect, silent house. The way she had leapt up, shouting, "Turn that off. Where did you get that?" I held up the rattle, Liam continued. "I told her, you left your spy behind, Mom." At first, she tried to deny it. She said it was fake, that you were a designer and could have faked it. Then she tried to gaslight me, saying she only did it because she was so worried, that she knew you were a danger to yourself and the baby, and she needed proof to make me see. He shook his head, a look of disgust on his face. I didn't let her finish. I told her I knew exactly what she was, a manipulative, cruel woman who would rather destroy her son's marriage than lose control. I told her I saw everything now, every comment, every jab, every single thing she has done to you for the last 2 years. Tears welled in my eyes as I listened. This was the man I had married, the defender I had needed. "I laid down the law, Andrea," he said, his grip on my hands tightening. "I told her that effective immediately, she is to have no contact with me or with you, and under no circumstances will she ever be alone with our child. I told her the only way she would ever be a part of our lives again is if she gets professional help and, after months of it, can come to you and offer a genuine, comprehensive apology for every single thing she has done. I told her not to hold her breath." He said she had collapsed into a chair, for the first time in his life, utterly defeated. The puppet master had her strings cut, and there was nothing left. "I left the rattle on her coffee table," he finished, a little reminder of her masterpiece. He looked at me, his face a mask of remorse and love. "It's over, Andrea. I promise you, it's over. From now on, it's just you, me, and this baby. We are the family. No one else gets to break it." In that moment, I knew he meant it. The final showdown hadn't been loud or explosive for me. It had been quiet, vicarious but utterly triumphant. Margaret's spell was broken. My husband was back. We were finally free. The days that followed the confrontation were quiet and strange, filled with a new kind of peace. It was as if a constant, low-grade hum of anxiety that I hadn't even fully been aware of had suddenly been switched off. The house felt lighter. My shoulders, which had been perpetually tensed, finally relaxed. Margaret, true to Liam's ultimatum, made no attempt to contact us. There were no calls, no texts, no surprise pop-bys. Her silence was the most wonderful gift she had ever given me. Liam was a changed man. The easygoing, conflict-avoidant person I knew had been replaced by someone more deliberate, more attentive. He was rebuilding the trust his blindness had eroded, not with grand gestures, but with small, consistent acts of solidarity. He listened, truly listened, when I talked. He would ask about my day and be genuinely interested in the minutiae of my design projects. He started referring to us as Team Miller, a small but significant shift in language that spoke volumes. He was no longer a man caught between two women. He was a man standing firmly beside his wife. His relationship with the rest of his family underwent a seismic shift. The news of what Margaret had done and the undeniable proof of it trickled out. His Aunt Carol, Margaret's co-conspirator on the recording, was mortified at being exposed and sent me a brief, stilted apology note. Other family members who had been loyal to Margaret now kept their distance, unsure of how to navigate the new landscape. Liam was patient but firm with them all. "My priority," he told his father, "is Andrea and our child. Anyone who doesn't respect that doesn't have a place in our lives." My best friend, Sophie, was, of course, triumphant. "I never thought I'd say this," she said over lunch a week later, "but thank heavens for that evil woman's obsession with spy gadgets. She handed you the gun, the bullet, and a signed confession." We laughed, and it felt good. The victory wasn't just mine, it was ours. About 3 weeks after the showdown, with my due date looming, Liam came home with a small, beautifully wrapped gift. My heart gave a little lurch, but he smiled gently. "Don't worry," he said. "This one's been vetted for all listening devices." Inside was a simple, elegant silver locket. It was modern and minimalist, exactly my taste. "I know gifts are probably the last thing you want right now," he said, his voice soft. "But I wanted you to have something that was just from me, something to symbolize our new beginning, the real start of our family." I opened the locket. On one side was a tiny photo of us from our wedding day, and on the other side, he had left it empty. "That side," he said, "is for the baby." Tears welled in my eyes, real, genuine tears of love and relief. This gift wasn't a symbol of ownership or heritage. It was a promise of a future we would build together, on our own terms. A few days later, our beautiful baby girl, Olivia, was born. Holding her in my arms for the first time, all the drama and pain of the past few months melted away, replaced by an overwhelming, fierce love. Liam was by my side, his face a picture of awe and adoration. As he leaned over to kiss Olivia's tiny forehead, I saw the truth of his promise reflected in his eyes. We were a fortress now, a united front. We never heard from Margaret again. Liam's father told us she had become a recluse, too ashamed to face the social circle she had worked so hard to dominate. Her reign was over. Her plan to control her son's life had backfired spectacularly, leaving her completely alone. There was a part of me that felt a flicker of pity, but it was quickly extinguished by the profound sense of peace she had unintentionally given us. Our home was filled with love, laughter, and the sweet chaos of a newborn. One evening, I was rocking Olivia in the nursery, humming softly. The moonlight streamed through the window, illuminating the whimsical forest mural I had finished painting on the wall. It was my design, my work, my vision. It was a space I had created, a calm and happy world for my daughter. The silver rattle and the shadow it cast were gone forever, replaced by the simple, beautiful truth of our new life. We were safe. We were whole. And we were finally, completely free.